This was hilarious. I was laughing so much. This isn't supposed to be a comedy, so I don't know.
It was Hereditary. Hereditary all over again, Baines. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't understand it, man. You don't understand it.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 501. And for 501, we're all wearing our 501 Levi's trousers, Levi's jeans, and denim jackets, and denim face masks as well. We're fully denimed up. That's our look. No.
501!
501. No, we don't wear 501s. They're disgusting. The worst kind of denim trousers you could ever get. No, we are doing horror stuff. We are all dressed up, looking fancy. And if you have looked at our Patreon video, which you can't do, but maybe you can look at the thumbnail for it on our Patreon page, which is we'll have the link to in the QUACKCAST notes. You can see the thumbnail and you can see us all dressed up. Oh, and probably on the actual cover of this QUACKCAST, there'll be an image of us all dressed up and with our magnificent makeup. So, but anyway, if you are a Patreon, then you could actually go and see us actually talking all dressed up in our fantastic looks. I was a vampire. Tanserine was a fantastic doctor vampire. Doctor, lawyer, judge, vampire. She was, all the qualifications. Superior.
I have like 4 lives, so I have a lot of professions.
Exactly. It's enough time to get all those qualifications, those doctorates. So there you go. And Baines, he was like old Nosferatu. Very old.
Young, hip vampire.
Very young and hip.
Very spry.
Yes, very spry.
Yes.
And hot.
Yes.
Especially in that mask.
Yes. It was very easy to get on the second time. It was like gooey sweat.
Slid on. It was lubed up.
Yeah.
And Pitt was the corn vampire.
Corny vampire.
Very corny with these fantastic like wiry stringy bits all over your face. It just looked awesome and horrific.
Get ran over by a tractor.
Yep.
Eaten by a threshing machine, I think. And spat out the bum end of it and turned into this ferocious monster.
Speaking of threshing, I'll just make an interesting aside. It's only interesting to me, but there's this reenactment town here called Old World, Wisconsin, as I continue to triangulate my position. It's this really cool open air museum, and it's like this settlers town that's been preserved, and there's reenactors and stuff. And like there was a guy there like dressed in like old timey clothing, and like he was threshing wheat. And I had the most surreal experience, and that like me and my dad went over there, and like my dad used to work on his uncle's farm, and they like found this camaraderie through their knowledge of threshing wheat. And I just sat there on a bench listening to them talk for like 45 minutes about threshing wheat. It was surreal.
Oh my lord! So now you know everything from a actual operator's perspective of wheat threshing.
And does this come after the corn vampire idea, or can we trace the idea back?
It all just comes back to living in Wisconsin, I think.
Oh,
The Wisconsin experience.
Midwest.
You could have been
Anyway, go on with your intro. I'm sorry. I needed to share that.
All right.
You knew there was that much to say about threshing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more threshing than anthrax. So, we are going to just talk about horror movies and scary stuff and our favorite horror movies or horror ghostly experiences, like, you know, we tend to do this time of the year. So before we get into that, I got to bring up the featured comic that I featured this week, which is Matriarch. So I will be talking about Matriarch now. Hello, I'm Ozan Ocean, and my feature for the week was Matriarch. While scouting in enemy territory, young Haladinia hears a strange sound in the woods and rushes to investigate. What she sees astounds her. She beholds a huge and wondrous beast, part lion, part wolf, obviously mage created. It's badly wounded and near death. Although she fears it, she moves in to help. They can't communicate, and yet they seem to understand one another. The majestic creature is clearly intelligent, but what is it? This is the story of a nation at war and a royal girl who has taken a male identity as Edion so she can join the fight. It's a fantasy story with romance, action, and magic. The art is lushly drawn in black and white, mostly with high detail on faces and clothing. It's called Matriarch. So this is a nice fantasy comic with a big focus on character and their fantastic faces mainly. So you'll see a lot of that. There's a bit of action, but you're mainly getting character interaction and just the imagery, which is quite nice to look at. It's unusual in that it is sort of black and white grayscale, so like a black and white photo, and more leaning towards the darker side of that kind of thing, so not sort of faded greys like a black and white photo, but yeah, lots of gradients, grey gradients, and very, very lush. There's some colour in it, like for magic and stuff like that, that's picked out, and I think maybe blood and stuff like that, but mainly it's in the grey tones, and it looks quite nice. So I hope you enjoy this comic, Matriarch, and it's rated M. The comic is done by Chipper Chartreuse. So enjoy it. And that was Matriarch, which is a really interesting story. We haven't gotten to who the matriarch is yet, so just have to find out what that's about. Okay, so next up we have the theme music that Gunwallace has sent us, and Gunwallace has sent us the theme to a comic called Space Pirates of the Black Quarter. So another long title for this comic. And this music is Space Techno Future. Dinging pulses launch us into a star-speckled hyperspace. We are lulled by the gentle techno rhythm till a glaring buzz comes along to disturb us. A warning of what's to come. The lulling rhythm soothes us once more till we're shocked by a sudden burst of acceleration and a return of the fuzzing buzz. So take it away, Gummels, with the theme to Space Pirates of the Black Quarter. Was the theme to Space Pirates of the Black Quarter, a comic by DPAT57, and it's rated T. Okay. This Quackcast is about horror and scary stuff and all those Halloweeny, lovely things. So I've got to tell you, the most hilarious horror film is Hereditary, and that's true. And anyone who disagrees with me is a crazy, insane person. No one would ever disagree with me, so I don't have to put that into into practice. Pitface is biting her tongue at the moment.
I think she's
You
not
can be
biting.
wrong. That's fine. I mean, it's fine. You can be wrong. It's okay.
I can be, but luckily I'm not. So.
She's not biting her tongue. She's just biding her time.
She unleashes the fury.
Yeah. Just writing this all down in her little notebook.
She is the red note.
Yeah.
So, like, a good horror film I watched recently, well, sort of comedy horror, is, damn it, I cannot remember what it's called. Hide and Seek, I think. I think that's what it was called. Like, this was a Netflix thing, I'm pretty sure. And so this film was about these newlyweds. They've like become newlywed. They're staying over for some reason at the mansion house, like, because the groom is super rich, comes from a super rich family, and like part of the ritual of getting married into this family means you have to stay over the night at the family home, right? Whatever. And so the
Is it Ready or Not?
yeah, could be Ready or Not. So the
Yeah, that's the one.
the
The theater,
family,
yeah.
the family all get together and they say, okay, so like part of the ritual of, you know, like introducing a new bride into the family is we have to play a little game. You know, it's just a little game. So they open a box or whatever, you know, and it's like or they shuffle cards, I don't know, whatever. And it's like there's a whole bunch of games on these cards, and like they happened to pick hide and seek. Hide and seek is going to be the game. You know what could be bad about hide and seek? Such an innocent thing. Why would you have a horror thing based on hide and seek? So obviously it's going to be innocent. And so they tell up, like, you've got to hide, and if we don't find you before sun up, then you win. And everything's fantastic. So we got to try and find you before sun up. So she runs off to hide. And what it turns out is that the family then go and search for weapons in this room where they had organized the thing. So that, like, they pull off a crossbow of a display and a shotgun and spear gun and you know, daggers and all this kind of stuff. So they have to hunt down this woman and kill her. And you know, she finds out about this and sort of thinks, oh my god, these people are insane and crazy, and I have to, you know, avoid them at all costs, and obviously, you know, try to fight back. So I won't spoil it, I won't go on to, you know, tell you actually what happens, but it's got a lot of twists in it, and it was quite well told. It's not the best movie, but it was quite a bit of fun. That's, you know, because like when we talk about horror, it's not all about just one thing or the other. There's a whole like spectrum of different kind of like styles of stuff, and this is something that more appeals to me. That's got a little bit of comedy involved in it, and
Yeah,
like,
we talked about
twists.
beforehand that we see movies for different reasons. You know, we're as viewers, we all kind of go into movies wanting to get things out of them that might be different than the person next to you, you know, which is why, like, for instance, I love Hereditary, and Oz thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. And I can kind of get that, but like there are some things I got out of it that I like to see horror movies a lot of times to put myself in a situation, and which sounds crazy to people who aren't into it. So they're like, well, why would you want to be in that situation? It's not that you want to, but it's really hard to explain. But Hereditary is like, it connects to like a familial kind of fear, like the part where he's dreaming and he starts screaming and crying like a child, and his mother sets herself on fire after telling him that she didn't want to have him and stuff like that, all during that dream. And that's super dramatic, but the way it is steadily built. For me, the thing I got out of it was like it steadily built this kind of fear that I can relate to as a child. Like I was never afraid of my parents per se, but like that feeling of, what if I crossed this line one day that I could never undo? What if I went so far and got in so much trouble that, my family hated me or something like that, and it kind of connects to that kind of like a fear that shouldn't be relatable, but it is in its core. And that's what I kind of get out of that. So when all that crazy, weird stuff starts going on, and it gets really amped up at the end, but like, I can connect with that and I can feel that really deeply. And, whereas like with Ready or Not, I enjoyed that movie, but I don't remember it as well because, I connect to different things in movies than you probably do a little bit. Like I enjoyed it, but like I remember like the end kind of being like, oh, like, well, this was fun, but like I don't know what I'm getting out of it other than that, Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a piece of like fun, really, like you say.
Yeah.
Just fun cinema. For me,
you're not necessarily into a portal of hell, which is actually what I feel very much Hereditary is. Like you're looking into like a little window of hell kind of as things get out of control. Whereas with Ready or Not, it's like, there are times when you feel, you're watching the main protagonist and like, are they going to get her? What's going to happen? What about this person that's helping her? What are they really doing? Like, it's an interesting movie, but.
Yeah. Well,
The one movie I actually enjoyed, I usually do not enjoy horror movies. I think that is pretty much established. But the one movie that I actually did enjoy was Get Out. And hearing you talk about what we look for in movies, it's such a psychological terror to be trapped in your own body and be unable to control your own body, but still have the consciousness of what is happening to it or someone else controlling it for you. And that for me is fascinating. So I could see why, like I was confused why I liked it, to be honest. But now that I hear your reasoning, Pete Pace, I think that it's when the horror explores something that interests you or at least resonates with you, it actually becomes enjoyable even when you are very, very tense and very absorbed to the point that you can get jump scares without the jump scares, if you know what I mean. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's the point. I'm done.
I'd say so too. Like both those things, like the childhood stuff, like things that connect to your childhood, even in a thematic way in horror. That's really powerful to me too. Like a lot of Stephen King stories are that way. Like they'll sort of take the anxiety and the sort of unknown ness of the world that there is when you're a kid. And even with your family, even if they're good people and like they're good to you and you're not afraid of them, like there is that sort of unknown thing, and that like lines that you don't know what to cross and what not to cross, and those just those childhood worries and anxieties that you have are like you tap into that and then you give it a little twist to exaggerate it, and that really gets under my skin too. Like that's really effective stuff, as well as character stuff like blah blah blah. Yeah.
And now that you mention it, for me, it was hilarious. I found it funny, and that is most of the people I know were afraid of it, and I'm talking the Tim Curry one because I didn't bother watching the new one, but he's funny.
Well,
He's actually funny.
funnily enough, speaking of finding something funny, I found like as we said, like Hereditary funny. For me, that was had a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was like they ramped up the tragedy too far too fast, like, and the reactions to it, and okay, so there's family tragedy, and the notes are just going up too far too fast, and then going down too far too fast. So it's like it's very unnatural. So Toni Collette's reactions to, oh my god, my daughter being killed, it's like horrified, and her facial expressions are massively exaggerated. And then like the next day, like she'll be laughing along, and or just her expressions will totally change, and she'll be like being jolly for her son or whatever. But so those emotional levels, they're just in that film, like it's like turning the knob up this way, turning the knob down, turning the knob back that way, turning the knob down that way. It was just too much of like extremes without like having someone going more on a mid level. So there was that. I disagree. But like this is my personal reaction. So there was the emotional stuff going up and down, up and down, up and down. And for the son, like the bad stuff for him was just ratcheting up more than what is like, for a certain level you can take, okay, that's bad with this person, that's bad, but for a certain level you just go, okay, that's sort of beyond a joke now, and that's going on to it's like Spaceballs, where they go, okay, it's warp speed. Okay, now like we're going ludicrous speed. It's like that. Like, how sad can you be about something before it becomes like ridiculous?
You know what? The thing that becomes very obvious is that horror is very, very close to comedy, like extremely close.
Yeah, well, exactly.
They are basically like, if we were to make them personifications, they would probably be siblings.
Yeah,
horror and comedy.
Brother and sister. Yeah, but the other thing that was like would be funny to me is like scenes that are meant to be scary, that are like his mother is floating on the attic roof, like on the attic ceiling, like floating, and she's like got this massive grin on her face. She's sawing her head off with this bloody cheese wire while she's grinning and sort of just jerking from side to side. And there's no way you can find that scary with that grin and those jerky movements and floating like as if like, hanging on wires. It was just like, you can't take that seriously. It's not scary. Anyway, that was my personal, like, and there was just so many other little touches like that should have been scary, but didn't hit the right note. It was just like the setup was wrong. Like if someone else would have done it, like a little bit better, a little bit more intelligently, or not more intelligently, but I don't mean to put it down, but like if the setup was just slightly better for that thing happening. It was just so many unintentional things. I would love to do a riff tracks of Hereditary. That would be perfect. Okay, all right. No more Hereditary, because I could bring up a lot more, but okay. Someone else.
I actually have.
You think you're going to be like, oh no, it's just my view. It's just my viewpoint. And then we're just going to talk about Hereditary the whole fucking time without ever agreeing on anything. So.
Well, yeah, go.
Yeah, I can see, like, it's a fine line, and that's why I said that comedy and horror are so back to back in the sense that just like it, which also goes back to culture, I think, as well, because for it, like clowns in Greece were never scary, ever.
Oh, really?
So we don't really have this scary clown like, urban legend, if you want to call it that. Or
never had John Wayne Gacy.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
So for us, a clown is a clown. It's basically a ridiculous, funny caricature of a person. So it's extremely hard to make him scary, like legitimately scary, at least to people like me. I think there are some scary moments where the teeth come out and things like this, but that would look scary on anything, and not the clown per se. Like the awe and intimidation that comes from, oh my God, the clown, I cannot feel it the way that an American would feel it. And it's completely due to, I think, history.
Yeah, I've had friends that have been like crippling clown phobia.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I don't feel it either, because if I did have it, I wouldn't have survived as a kid, because my mom collects clown memorabilia.
Oh my God.
So they were everywhere. But so my memories related to clowns are positive, you know, but that's like the outlier. There are a lot of times people here that, yeah, if you do bring up clowns or talk about them or show them pictures of them, they want nothing to do with it. And I find that super intriguing that it's specific to America. I never thought of that before. Baines, is there a similar kind of in Oz too? Like, are there similar reactions like that to clowns where you guys live?
Yeah, because American culture is exported here, so we feel the same.
Exactly. I've never had a phobia, but I find them to be effective monsters, you know, from the Joker to Pennywise and forward. You know, I don't find them scary innately, but it's interesting that they can be a mask, I guess, sort of a non-human human, and also that something that's supposed to be fun can mask something that's horrible underneath. There's definitely something in there. I mean, for our culture, for me personally, it's pretty quite effective.
Well, there is an old tradition of clowns being maybe not always scary, but brutal, and that's well established, because there's the there's the Joker or the trickster character. You know, if we go back to the Norse mythology, you got Loki, and that character definitely exists in Native American beliefs as well. There's a rather unfortunate trickster god. In African beliefs as well, it's the same kind of thing. And trickster gods aren't, like nice and friendly tricks. They're the kind of tricks that can kill people quite often. And they find it, terribly funny, even though everybody else finds it very tragic. And you have people dressing up as these trickster gods, like avatars of them. In Native American culture, they have that, and it's like when they do, they like atavistically take on the properties of this character. So like they're all disguised, so they're allowed to play like mean practical jokes, or like beat someone over the head with like a comedy club or whatever like this, or like be acceptably violent or play nasty tricks on people, this kind of stuff. And it's all part of the ritual. So and that's not just known to Native American cultures. There's all sorts of other, like I think in like Finland as well, they have this thing where people dress up in these horrific sort of like comical outfits and things. So yeah, that's all related to that stuff. So yeah, clowns do sort of like straddle that line between scary and funny. Yeah, there's a lot of examples. Like Punch and Judy. So this is like a goes back to medieval days, maybe even further. You have like the Punch and Judy, his wife, and he's meant to be comical, but he's doing brutal things. He's beating her up, and there might be death or something like that, like killing the baby or whatever. So there's it's like comedy horror is always there.
And I guess that makes it all the more unnerving to a lot of people, because when you don't know what you're going to get, that makes it worse. Like, with like a slasher or something like that, like, you're going to get like somebody chasing you, trying to kill you. Like, that's scary, but like, what you're getting. Whereas with a clown, I guess it's like, is this guy going to squirt a fake daisy in my face, or is he going to shake me? I don't have an imagination right now. I'm very sorry. But like, you don't know what you're getting with a clown, I guess. And that's, when you think about it, that's really fucking creepy.
Well, yeah. The Joker's clown would be squirting acid in your face.
That's true.
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson.
We have one brain here. Except for on Hereditary, everything else.
That's very ideal that he was.
I'm trying to think of like the equivalent to clowns that would be here in Greece. And actually, we don't really have, we have something very weird. And I think it comes from our Middle Ages. It's a single figure that is extremely beautiful. That is fucking terrifying over here. If you happen to be alone on the street, or even more, at the woods or some kind of remote area, and you see just a single man or woman that is extremely beautiful, you run. It's supposed to be like super scary. And I was thinking about that, like how that came about, and it is because we don't really have our mythology has a lot of monsters like the chimera and stuff like that, but those didn't really carry over as monsters that mortals should be afraid of. Like, they were very stationary to a very specific area, and if you stayed away from there, you were safe. Didn't really become a part of your life. However, nymphs and witches pretty much were your threats. In the ancient times, the nymphs were the ones that could enchant you and either make you die as a mortal because you followed them around and they were immortals and didn't need the sustenance that you would need, so you died of thirst and famine and you didn't even realize it because you were so enchanted by the nymphs. Or if they were evil for whatever reason, like they were seeking revenge on men or women, depending on their story and stuff. Then they actually really fucked you over. Sorry, bleep me out. And they were all very, very beautiful. And then you had the witches that came from the medieval times more than the nymphs. And I think they are like a progression. The nymph turns into the witch, and the witch is never ugly. Like she is always very beautiful. And she is able to basically do anything she wants with you, and you will never understand it until it's too late. So
Okay.
that's where it comes from. Like if you are too beautiful and alone, because you have to be alone, usually they are like figures that appear and are targeting you basically, and you should be very afraid if you are in this.
Yeah. Oh.
So like, okay. It reminds me of in Irish mythology, the fairy. So they'd be very beautiful, and they'd go, oh yes, I'm injured, can you help me? And then they'd they'd seduce some mortal to help them, whatever, and then they'd say, oh, would you like to have some of our food? And they'd you'd eat the food, and then you would be theirs to do with what they wanted. And
Exactly.
you wouldn't be able to understand them, like you're saying, because they're totally alien. So you can't.
Or the witch could be monstrous, but she would have a glamour, and she would still be very beautiful. Like the mortal sees the beauty, even if in reality she is like very old or ugly, or she has some kind of pact with the devil and shows in some manner. You will never be able to see it. Like it's not like you were looking for the moles and stuff, that the stories that come from Salem or from more west than us. You have no hope. No hope of realizing that she is a witch, unless you are wearing a cross. If you're wearing a cross, you can tell.
Yes. Like with fairies, it would be iron. If you had iron with you, they'd go and go away, and then you'd see through the glamour. Like the same thing, glamour. They'd say, "Oh, here's gold. Here's gold for you," and then you'd have pockets full of gold, and when they leave, you open your pockets and it's just all stones. So yeah, it's just exactly the same kind of mythology. Like the whole glamour thing probably comes from the same roots, because Celtic people, they came from like people imagine, Celts, they came from Ireland, they came from Scotland or whatever. No, actually Celts, they came from all the way over in Asia somewhere, and they went all the way across, down from into Central Europe, and past countries like Turkey and Greece, and all the way over, and Ireland and Britain. That's the last vestiges of the Celts, not the first.
Let's not forget the Roman Empire as well. All of these things circulated.
True. Yeah. So the Romans had a part in all that. Yes, so all these mythologies are connected in many and various ways that we don't often realize. But horror movies, they do tie into a lot of, culturally, things that come down through the culture. I'm just going to say hereditary. Which,
You exaggerate. That movie did its work. But yeah, and of course there is also the horror with the devil, either the possession or the devil appearing to make a deal, or the devil basically becoming the witch over here.
oh really?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, like the deal with the devil. That's we would call it like a Faustian pack. I don't think Faust was the first one to. I don't think that was the first story, but it's become, that's what it's
Yeah.
known for. There's so many stories, but that's like ancient stories about genies. Same kind of thing. It's always that same, the monkey's paw. All come back to that deal with the devil thing, or deal with death as well. So death and the devil, but death doesn't really care as much generally. That's what I like. Like modern depictions of death in movies is always death is evil and he wants to take you down to hell and he wants to kill you. But ancient depictions of death are like pitiless. He doesn't care. And I like that. That appeals to me.
I like the depiction of death in is it the Ninth Seal? I always get it confused with the Ninth Gate and the Seventh Seal, or the Seventh Seal. Is it Seventh Seal? Okay. The one with the seal in it. That one has a pretty good depiction of death. I wouldn't say it's a horror movie per se, but death in that one is personified much more as a force of nature. And the knight's conflict in it is, of course, he's playing a chess game against death to see if he can keep his soul. And the underlying theme of the movie is the dance of death, which is related to the plague, which, death came to men, women, children, kings, paupers, everyone. It equalized everybody, which is why at the very end, you see the people. It doesn't show you that those people had died, but you see them walking with death in a chain circle in the dance of death. And if you know your iconography and stuff about the dance of death, then you know that it does in fact mean that they all succumb to the plague because they're all dancing the dance of death together. But anyway, if you want a really cool depiction of death, or at least like a one where he's more of like, he's not good or bad, he's just doing his thing, that's a good movie to watch. I really like that movie.
The Ninth.
What's the movie? I missed the.
Oh shit.
The Ninth Seal. It has what's his name? Von Sydow.
Max
von
Sydow.
Yeah.
Yeah. He plays the knight in it.
Okay. The Exorcist himself.
The Exorcist himself.
King Osric. If anyone knows Conan the Destroyer.
Oh yeah. Okay. He was also in Judge Dredd.
Yes. Yeah, what was his character? He was cool.
Yeah, Ingmar Bergman.
He was the judge. He was like I can't remember his name, but the elder judge that went on the long walk to save Dredd.
Yes.
Anyway.
A great movie. Now that's the one thing. Like, okay, so 2000 AD and the judge's whole Judge Dredd stuff. This, like, even though it's like sort of semi-superhero movies, the actual comics are very much horror comedy or just like horror sci-fi. They really are that, and the writers like are experts at that. Any of those stories, if you ever been into Judge Dredd and the 2000 AD stuff, it really does skirt that line, and they cross over it quite a bit with their characters.
The one from Dredd that sticks out the most for me in terms of horror. I mean, you're right. Like they have, stuff with like the dark judges and stuff that come and start killing people off and stuff. But the one that stuck out to me as being the most utterly terrifying is the one with Satanus, the T-Rex. And he's got like this cult, and they're literally like tying people to poles, like judges and stuff. And Satanus comes and just like rips them off the poles and eats them. That was fucking scary, dude. And Jud's trying to get free, and Satanus is working his way down, like eating people on the poles and shit. And Jud's like, ah.
And of course, the most memed moment in Judge Dredd history is probably him punching Fear in the face, the Fear Judge.
Gaze into the face, into the fist of Dredd.
His fist passes through all the way through the guy's helmet. That's so cool.
It is. It really is.
But just, so that is a great example of, you know, people sort of like blending genres and taking stuff like in really interesting directions. Even in, like, you know, we mentioned the Judge Dredd film, so the first Judge Dredd film with Sylvester Stallone, we have that the horror moment with the what that family called, you know, in the Angel family or something, in the like in the Badlands and the Wastelands there, the
the ones that are blown away by the older judge. Oh no,
I can't remember. So it's like the this freaky family, disgusting, you know, hideous mutants, and you just look at those people and you think, oh my god, what horrific things have been done to them, and what horrific things will they commit? You know, even though the film is a little cheesy, it still has the ability to affect you. And there's great costumes and great outfits in that film. I mean, they're
I was so
really
glad
cool.
they had Mean Machine in there. You can't have the Angel family without having Mean Machine.
Oh, he was awesome. Freaking awesome. Like, he's this half cyborg creature with these massive scars all over his body. And
he's got the dial on his head, which is his main thing. Like, he's a big beefed up guy, but like his gimmick kind of is that he has the dial on his head to determine how angry he is, and it goes from like surly, they're so nice, it goes from like surly to like something and something and something. But anyway, this isn't a Dreadcast, but so I won't go into how much I fucking love that character, but I did anyway, sorry.
He's awesome. There are a lot of aspects of that film that were good and could have been done better, and we'll leave that for another cast. But yeah. Okay, we've monopolized this. Tan, Spain's. Sorry. What?
I was thinking when it comes to horror, within the limits of Halloween, I think that stories like the monkey's paw are extremely scary to someone like me. I remember reading that story at school for English class, and it stayed with me. Like, I could actually see that monkey's paw in my mind, and I hadn't seen. I think there is like a film or a short film or something like that, and that was the scariest thing I had ever seen in my mind reading the story, and because you know that thing is evil, and you know that whatever it does is always going to bring more horror. And that scene with the door banging and you know that the sun is on the other side, and you know that he's probably a zombie.
Yeah, it's freaky, and the parents never see whatever's there.
Yeah,
It's
and the
pure
mother
imagination, right?
opened the door, and the father has got the picture. It's like, oh my God, that was like, that scene. I still remember. I almost remember the text that itself. That was very scary. Without it really needing to be very complicated or anything like that. Just the door banging, and then it's silent, and the silence is also scary. Uh,
That's how it ends, right? Isn't it? If I remember right.
Not exactly. It ends with the mother being extremely desperate. Okay. Nobody's happy. Nobody gets to be satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was one horror, and the other horror that it's not considered horror, but for me is horrific, is a play by Ibsen, which is called Ghosts, and it's really a story about a son being plagued by the sins of his father, basically. And I don't want to spoil it because the horror is in how the yarn unravels. He returns, like we watch him return to his dying father, I think, not mother. I don't remember now exactly because I haven't dared to read it again in years. But it's like you at first you think that he is really a bastard son, like a really nasty piece of work. But then things unravel and unravel and unravel, and you realize what has happened and how horrific this person's life is and how they basically cannot escape from it. And for me, that is the ultimate horror. So I absolutely recommend reading it. Actually, I would recommend reading it and not watching it because your mind will make it worse. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
So,
Still a good play to go and see.
yeah, but read it first. Is my recommendation. So there's that.
What about you, Bones? What's your horror faves?
Well, I saw something recently that was I had to kind of hunt it down to see it, and was looking forward to it. Kind of because I thought it would be really grim and dark. I don't know if I've ever liked really grim and dark stuff, but I thought like a low budget horror would be a little more kind of over the line, and I would like it more. I think it was called All Hallows Eve, and I like the Art the Clown character.
Huh.
Who had a movie, and I thought I think that actor is awesome as Art the Clown. Not to drag it all back to clowns all the time, but I saw the movie and it was too grim. It was like too bleak, too dark.
Okay.
I kind of like, not exclusively, but I kind of like it when there's some victory to be had at the end of horror, or a sense of fun at least. Like really like dour stuff is not my cup of tea, but I will say that probably the scariest stuff is more bleak, I guess, and more dour. I had the story. Somebody said that young Goodman Brown was like the scariest story, the best horror story. So I hunted that up online and read it. And at first I was like, "What is like? This is not scary. Like, what is this?" But by the end, it's like I get it. I'm like, I sort of get what real. Just looking at your guys' messages back. I sort of get what real horror is to me. It's kind of like, and Young Goodman Brown like exemplifies this perfectly. Kind of, it's that like what you think is real is not real. You know, like it kind of ties into the idea of a masked killer or a clown or a psychopath who seems to be a normal person.
Yeah.
But it's the idea that what you think the world around you is not real. You know, I guess that's what real horror is to me.
Actually, yeah, that's something that's quite striking. Yeah, when you can't rely on the world anymore, the rules don't make sense.
Yeah.
That is horror. You know, like, say, like war. Like, in a war, you can't rely on anything anymore. The structure breaks down. It's a kind of insanity. And horror films are the same way. Have you ever had, like not necessarily a horror film, but a film that's like so weird that you just think, oh my god, this is like I'm going insane. I feel like I'm insane. And you have to watch something that's a bit more grounded in order to like center yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is a scary experience in its own way. And horror films that can tap into that are scarier than ones that, you know, provide you with a grounding.
Yeah, but you know what? If it is too out there, like I have realized that for me, and this is just for me, if it is too illogical and too far out there, then it stops being scary, and I also stop being invested. Like, okay, nothing makes sense, anything can happen. So I'm watching a random streak of events.
Yeah, it's a fine line.
So
It is.
it has to be insane, but not incoherent, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, it does. I mean, that goes, again, back to Hereditary and the reason why I like it so much, but Oz sees it in a different way than I do, because that line, we interpret that line differently as everybody does, you know? There was a movie that I watched this past week or so, and it was kind of a horror movie. I guess it would be considered like a folk horror movie. It was called Reflective Skin, and a lot of people like it, but it kind of crossed a line for me that was like that, because it was so constantly cruel, like that I found myself unable to process it. And I kind of need to do that afterwards and be like, you know, I need something else besides this kind of input, because I stopped getting anything from it. You know, like it's a really cruel movie. And to the point where it almost does cross into comedy sometimes because it's so needless. But
over the top.
But there was to a point where it was like, where it did have an effect of like, wow, you know, this is effective, and then it stopped being effective.
Okay, that's interesting.
I remember having this feeling. Actually, I have two examples. One where I checked out completely, and I just went to the end of the book because it was a book, just to see how it ended, out of some kind of weird sick curiosity. And the other one where it was insane, but it kept me engaged, and I was scared. And then I realized what was happening, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay. So, but I don't. The second one was a movie. I don't remember the title of, and so I will spoil it, and I'm sorry. But it starts extremely insane. You get this guy, and he sort of goes through scenes of what might be his life, but then the characters morph into other characters, and he runs into stairs that go nowhere, but then they do go somewhere, and it's completely insane. It's a lot more insane than Alice in Wonderland. But then in the end, you realize, and it's a masterpiece in that if you manage to sit through it, and somehow you can, because it is all connected through this one single character, that this is a guy that is dying. He is on a highway, and he is bleeding out, and his brain is going through a series of not exactly random, but sequential thoughts as his faculties shut down and as he is dying. So we experience death with this person, and the only time we realize it is at the very end, like the last couple of minutes, even less, where he dies, and we sort of come out of his consciousness and quote unquote zoom out, and we see that he is with the paramedics, and then everything that he has seen and everything that he has experienced makes sense. And you realize what it is that you have been experiencing, and then it hits you like, oh my God, I just had a death experience, not near death, like a death experience. But I don't remember how the movie is called. I'm sorry. So that was like a crazy, that was done well.
Yeah.
Trusting you, to trust it to lead you somewhere. Because a lot of people, I think, stopped the movie before they went to the end. And then there was this book where it's basically body horror. It's a serial killer that kills women very, very graphically. And we see every single detail described. It's basically death porn, like an not Alcide's comic. It's like a deathly stuff, and assassination porn. And it doesn't really make any sense how this killer stays on the loose, because you know who it is, but nobody else does. And it stops having an impact. You don't care. You know that every woman that appears and is not the main character
will die.
Is going to die extremely graphically and insanely, because it doesn't make sense why she would go along, because he kills very slowly and she just sits there.
Yeah.
Not because she's drugged or anything.
Just mesmerized, like a mouse by a snake. Sort of thing.
Worse, yes.
You know what pisses me off, speaking of horror films, is when, obviously there's always a balance in horror films, not just insanity, but all sorts of things, between, always maintaining that suspension of disbelief, or not even suspension of disbelief, just maintaining that you on the balance of terror and on the balance of finding something funny. But what really, really pisses me off is when you have the villain, the bad guy, the murderer, the serial killer or whatever, who just happens to be a frickin' expert at everything. Oh, the police are gonna come. Oh, but the serial killer just happens to be an expert with every single kind of gun, and, manages to kill, the police or whatever. And the serial killer is an expert with knives and medicine. And the serial killer is the fantastic hand-to-hand fighter and an acrobat, and can climb up, you can climb up the walls or whatever. And I'm not talking supernatural serial killer like Jason or whatever, because of course he is larger than life. I'm talking about the human ones. And
yes.
So this serial killer is a 42-year-old woman, or like like some old guy, and yet they can do every freaking thing they need to do in order to do that, which is it's just
They have thought
dumb.
of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Or
That's why.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
That's why I think American Psycho works really well as a movie. I've never read the book, but like I thought that they managed to balance that really well, and that I forget his name now. Christian Bale's character, the Psycho. He's effective, you know, he gets people in and he kills them and stuff, but I remember by the end, you know, he goes a bit too far, and it comes to the point where he's expecting and you're expecting him to be caught. Or no, like he even calls and turns himself in or something. Like he goes to that part where like he's not the perfect killer anymore. He can't do it, you know, like it's done. This is the end. And he gets away solely because society doesn't care enough, or it doesn't. It's also like an analogy for like, you know, it's like the whole 80s businessman thing and stuff like that, just kind of turning a blind eye to things. But like, I like that you do see him get to that moment of desperation. He's not an immortal killer, you know. And he can break down, and he has been breaking down. We've been seeing him through this whole movie go through, you know, like, you know, I am not here and stuff like that. And, you know, you dive into his psychology and stuff like that. And some of it's are funny. So it's part black comedy and this part, it's a trip, you know, but it works well in that they don't put him on a pedestal as a god or as like, you know, something to be admired. You're not supposed to admire this character. He's effective, but he's also, despite being so inhuman, he is still human, which is
also a monster, though. In the same He's a human, but also a monster.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that they took that kind of situation that you were talking about that kind of failed in these other movies, and like, you know, this is a case where they're able to do it well.
Yeah.
And pull off that kind of character.
Yeah. Well, it becomes, I think when they do it badly, it becomes the old Deus Ex Machina, doesn't it? Because the character is going to succeed until the character doesn't anymore, because the plot demands it. So the character, no matter what happens, will always beat the good guys, because that's how the story plot demands it. Whereas, say, with like you're talking about the American Psycho there, it's not just because the story demands it, it's because the character, you know, this is how the character is progressing, and it fits the needs of the character rather than the needs of the plot, which is, you know, what a story should do.
I remember, though, now that you, like, I have been listening to you talk about this, a very nice subversion of that it was in a Korean police drama police series, and the killer was infallible. Like, he was 4 or 5 steps ahead every single time, and a genius in everything, you know, you name it.
Of course.
And in the end, they actually explain it, because it's not just one killer, it's 3, and each one has their own expertise, and they listen into the police. So that's why they and they pose as a single killer, and they do that like it's a scheme. So and then after you get like 6 or 7 episodes of sheer frustration, like it's impossible for a guy to be this good, a human to be this good. But then you get this rush of adrenaline that it all makes sense now. That okay, okay, now I get it. Now I get it why the killer is so good. and hits like it's a rush. It's a you get a hit of endorphin there
Yeah.
when that happens.
I love that kind of thing where you're watching. It's like, oh, I like it, but it doesn't quite add up. It's like, oh well, they're never perfect. And then suddenly, like something explains everything. You're like, oh my god.
And then if you watch it again, knowing, then it is perfectly logical and
Yeah.
it's perfectly now I know what is going on.
All those little clues you dismissed are suddenly like, oh, they're actually clues.
They are clues. It's not
Not
holes. It's
Okay.
It was not a hole, and mad props. Like I always feel like I give a mental salute to the writers that manage to do that.
Sure.
I love them, and I hope they keep writing and they keep existing.
Keep producing quality work.
Mm-hmm. I love it, and then the fun part in that particular series was that the audience gets to realize it faster than the characters actually, because it's a team policeman, and you get to see it, to realize it before they do, just due to camera work. It's not that they tell you, but you see it, you subtly see it, and you say, "Oh my God, it's more than one," and then everything falls into place, and the suspense is when the police is going to actually realize it. So,
right,
yeah,
okay.
and this is about good writing now. So yeah.
So it has that feel of a like a detective story, that kind of thrill.
Mm-hmm. But at first it feels like horror, like this is a supernatural killer. There is no other way for this to be explained. Either that or bad writing, but it is shot like but it is shot like horror as well. It's almost like it is an evil spirit. They shoot it like this, and it has this feeling throughout until you realize that, okay, right, you bastards, now you.
Well, we are getting to like the 1 minute 20 mark, so we've had a good QUACKCAST about the subject. So should we hammer a stake in it, Sir Chestnut?
Yeah, as you slowly deteriorate from Ebola. You guys can't see it, but he's bleeding from the eyes and the mouth. And
That's like as a vampire, that could be the only type of blood I wouldn't have. Like that's
the dried caked blood.
The Ebola stuff is too.
Oh, the Ebola, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's too spicy. That's like level 10 for me.
This is what happens when you feast on an already dead, dying creature. You start to, your blood starts to come out of your eyes and your mouth, and yeah, you're dead after. Well, you're no longer undead. You're dead.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for listening to QUACKCAST number 501 and our Horrorcast. And, we have a video up from our QUACKCAST last week's on YouTube, so you can see all the Drunkduckers together if you go back to 500. So, but this is 501, but you have to...
All of us are wearing hats.
Yes, it was the Hatcast. But for this one, you'll have to see our Patreon video. You have to become a Patreon to see us in our horror. All right, goodbye, people. Goodbye.
Bye bye.